Good morning and welcome to another beautiful Saturday. It is the first Saturday in the year 2025, and I tell you a lot to bring to you this year. And so this is the first edition of Sports Personality here on Atlantic Television Network. On today's edition of the show, I will bring you a lot. But first off, my name is Ekpo Temple. So glad to be your host always on this show. When a managerial genius like Pep Guardiola openly admits, and I quote, "I regret letting..." Welcome back. Like I did mention earlier, if you're just joining us, this is Sports Personality on Atlantic Television Network. Dore Francis, a Cross River-based sports journalist, joins us this morning to look at our Sports Personality, the first edition in the year 2025. Mr. Francis, welcome to Atlantic Television Network. You can unmute yourself.
All right, yeah, thank you very much. Good morning. It's a pleasure having me on the show this morning.
I'm sure you are still basking in the euphoria of the Yuletide, the New Year. How's it been for you over there?
Well, it's been good all the way. I mean, not everybody who started, 2024 actually, saw it to the end. But I mean, we're just being grateful to God for.
And another thing is, every player do have personal issues that they struggle with. Even before he made up his mind to become a player. So for him, I think he has stuff like anxiety. How he was able to overcome these challenges, personal challenges, to the level of greatness is something that we need to talk about.
Sure. When I was digging on him, doing a couple of research on Jesus Navas, I mean, he's not the regular player. We know that players love flamboyant life.
Yeah.
Loves, fast cars, clubbing, especially South American players. But for Jesus Navas, he had the homesick syndrome, and his was a very chronic one. As a matter of fact, he had issues leaving his family, leaving any place he calls home. Honestly, I can actually relate. I had the same issue, but not the chronic one. I grew up in Lagos.
Okay.
I had a strong ties with my family, so it was. I never saw myself leaving my family at any point in time in
challenge with mental health, and for him, he was able to navigate that to get to the level that he is today when he's celebrated.
Well, talking about mental health, we've seen a couple of players who've also had mental health issues who could not, come back to their peak. I'm going to mention just a few players.
Okay.
Adriano, of the Brazilian Adriano, former Inter Milan player. He had the prospect. He was a great player, but when the news broke, because I follow Italian football a lot, I remember when the news broke that he lost his father. It was a tough one for Adriano back then. He battled anxiety, and he resorted to drinking. He did too much of alcohol, and we knew how it ended for him. He couldn't get back to that level he was. And also another player that comes to mind is Dele Alli. Dele Alli also have issues with anxiety. We remember Dele Alli. He was Lorisani. Yeah, he brought him from Shakalo 4. And that means Jesus Navas will be limited, will have a limited playing time. But Pep Guardiola, being a genius manager, created a space for him. From him forward, he was, deployed to a right wing back just to, fit into the Man City squad. And he still adapted. We know so many players will probably, struggle in a new position. A position he has not played his entire life. But due to his adaptability and his resilience and determination, he was able to fit into Pep Guardiola's squad. And he still gave his very best. Like I said earlier on, not the most prolific goal scorer, but from that light flank, trust me, was always giving defenders. It was a nightmare, to defenders. So in summarily, his determination, resilience, made him fit into Pep Guardiola's squad, despite the fact that he was played out of his, natural wing.
So do you think at this point now, Pep was...
It's what he wants to do, right? He even Drogba at some point in time came back to Chelsea. One would say he was already aging, but sometimes people have a special ties or a special connection with a particular club. So I think that was what it was for Jesus Navas. And then when he went back there, we saw what he did. He still he brought a whole lot things to the table for Sevilla. I don't think it was a downward trajectory for him. Maybe the connection he had with the city, the connection with the club, because the club actually gave him threw him into limelight after they won the UEFA Super Cup against Middlesbrough. He felt he needed to give back, to Sevilla. I think, I'm just saying from an outsider, he felt he wanted to give back to Sevilla for, after everything they did for him. I think that was probably what, motivated the move back to Sevilla.
And one thing too is the way he was able to balance his play, also display, like you said, did so well in the second stint, and I mean that also elevated his personality. And all the legacies that he achieved with the side, that also counts for something, isn't it?
Yeah, sure, definitely. I mean, the oldest player in the Spain national team. Let's start from the national team first.
Okay.
Oldest player to win the World Cup. Oldest to win. They won the Euros against England.
Yeah, they won the Euros. Yes, that's correct.
Yes, as the oldest player at the age of 38. I mean, that's phenomenal. It doesn't happen every time. The oldest player to win the European Championship. I think that also counts for something. And for Sevilla, he went back, had a couple of good games under his belt. He was a regular, was a captain, and I saw his emotional farewell when he was leaving at the last game for Sevilla. He was in tears, and I could understand because of the connection he had. And also reminds me of Javier Zanetti when he was living in Inter Milan as well. There are certain players that we don't really have loyalists anymore in football. Let's put that very clear. We don't have loyalists anymore in football. I had to bring in Zanetti because likes of Zanetti, Maldini, these guys spend almost their entire career in a particular football club. Permit me to digress a little bit.
No, that's okay.
Yeah. So leaving that club would hurt because it has been part of their life. They eat, they breathe that club. So I think it is also similar for Jesus Navas. Like I said, the connection has a strong connect aside the homesick syndrome, he left Sevilla, spent 4 years. He was able to overcome that, spent 4 years in England, and on familiar terrain. So going back, I think he has already overcome that homesick syndrome. So the connection he had with Sevilla made that very possible. And when he was leaving, I think they should have retired his jersey if I were to be one of Sevilla's hierarchy. The tears, the fans really love Jesus. It's like when Rooney, when Rooney was, I think United fans would consider him a legend. Started at a very tender age after he made that move from Everton to Manchester United. Scored plenty of goals, won laurels with them. But we can see how it is for him as a manager. He's been sacked just recently from Plymouth Agri after he lost to Frank Lampard 4-0. He has been sacked. Almost everywhere he has gone to, he has been sacked. So I think for Jesus Navas, maybe that might be happening going through his head. Yes, I could be a good footballer during my active days. I might not necessarily be a good manager or administrator or an assistant coach or whatever the case may be in any capacity. So I'm just saying, because at the moment, we've not heard anything about being integrated into Sevilla's. Maybe most of them start as a youth coach or a scout. They just work in various capacity, for their club side. But we've not seen that happen. Maybe it will happen in the nearest future. But maybe he's just taking his time at the moment. Maybe just spending more quality time with his family.
Another area we need to look at now is his exploit with his national team. At the age, he started in the under 21, team, exactly. 2004, and then, of course, before he made his debut with his side formally in 2009 under Vincente de Bosque, like you said earlier, and that also ensured that he played a pivotal role in the achievement, the World Cup achievement that they had, in South Africa in 2010. So, if you put all this together, also being part of the side, but he scored a decisive goal in 2012 in the Euros and a lot. So let's look at that transition too. Some players are very good in our club side, and they have this defection, when it comes to national teams. So sometimes it is difficult to blend. Sometimes it is difficult for them to rejuvenate what they have done in their teams, in their club side, to the national team. Plethora of example abounds. So how will you look at his playing career for both club and for his country?
First off, like you rightly mentioned, we have players who do very well for their club side, but they find it very difficult to hit the ground running for their national team. Let me even use Messi as an example. At some point in time, even though Messi had to leave the national team, because the Argentine fans felt he wasn't giving enough to the Abe Celesi. He left, came back again all thanks to Lionel Scaloni, who still had faith in him. Even in our own national team, we'll see what's his name right now. The band of Victor Boniface. Yeah, I mean, he's a dangerous player in Germany. But when he comes back to the national team, he becomes a shadow of himself. We've had series of players like that. But for Jesus Navas, first thing first, breaking into that squad as at that time was a little bit difficult. That's why I said we need to give credit to the coach who spotted him at the very turn, that is Joaquin Caparros. Spain had plethora of talent. They had like I said, they're almost their peak era. They had the Iniesta of this world, the Xavi, they had Sergio Ramos, Casillas. They had players. And Spain's kind of football. They don't play the fast-paced football. The tiki-taka. They caress the ball, they play champion football. And how do you bring in a fast-paced player, like Jesus Navas? It might alter the formation of the team, but he still find a way to integrate to that team. Like I said, different kind of player, not the high-profile player, business-minded player. Mo could just play this game, Mo could win this match. That was Jesus Navas for me. And he did the same thing for Sevilla. Like I said earlier on, not the high-profile type that scores plenty of goals, but he brings assist. He will always give you problem. And Frederick Canute, yes, I believe benefited from him. Is this Adriano? No, Luis Adriano, if I'm not mistaken, the Brazilian player, also benefited from his assists and crosses. Right?
True.
I think that's what he to the national team. That cutting edge, that icing on the cake. you know, was not allowed. You would never hear stories like they went to club.
You know.
You hardly hear negative stories around them because
True.
they are business-minded players. Let's go to training. Let's play, follow coach instruction, win games, go back, you know, prepare for the next game. That was why I had the homesick syndrome, because he had this attachment with his family. Now, let me digress a little bit. For a person who loves home, it will tell you that he's not that kind of person who probably love, you know, social life that much or frivolities. Because let me go back to my family.
Okay.
Let me spend quality time with my family. What am I doing outside? That was the kind of person he was, and it shows how, you know, serious-minded and business-minded he was as a footballer.
Now let's take a look at his final days with Sevilla and Spain. First off, with all that he's achieved, do you think he's highly celebrated? Do you think he's highly celebrated?
I don't think he's high. That's why I called him an unsung hero. He's not highly celebrated. I think Sevilla's, you know, paid him more tribute, celebrated him more. Let me use the word tribute. Celebrate him more, you know, than the Spain national team. Maybe because we have plethora of talent in the Spanish national team. Maybe we have plethora of talent. That's why he's not, you know, well celebrated like we would have loved him to be celebrated. You know, but for Sevilla, I think they gave him all the flowers he deserved. They gave him all the flowers he deserved. That captain, I could remember, he has been retired. It was taken to the trophy cabinet of Sevilla, you know, where it was, you know, properly retired. And I just hope they could do more for him. I think he's more celebrated in his club side than the Spanish national team, right?
And of course, that also should be a lesson to learn for young players, you know, coming up, not just within the confine of Sevilla and Spain. I'm sure a lot of people will look back to his career and say, okay, I wish I can be like Jesus Navas, who of course also had the potentials of, you know, becoming big. But like he said, his personal attributes seems to overwhelm every other achievement. So to him, it's about, let me achieve this and let me just live a moderate life. That's what it is for him.
True. I truly agree with you, and I share your sentiments. He's a dedicated player. You know, he just wanted to achieve what he wanted to achieve in football, and he did that. And we also saw we can't take away his longevity. We can't take away his longevity. At the age of 38, he was still playing, right?
Yeah.
We don't really see much at that level. Not just playing. We see players from 33, 34. They move over to the Saudi, to the Chinese league. With no disrespect to them. Like I said earlier on, you don't question people's ambition. People live or move for different reasons, best known to them.
That's
right?
true.
But for Jesus Navas, at the age of 36, 37, 38, he was still doing it in Europe. In Europe elite club in Spain. You know how tactical and technical it is in Spain. He was still there, very active. There was no sign of slowing down. There was no sign of aging. You know, we know how rigorous the Spanish league can be. You know, he just shows how dedicated he was to his business, to his craft. And
styles, players who play their trade in Europe, coming back to, you know, play for clubs here. Ijaye, you know, Ahmed Musa, and others. So I think that somehow the Brazilians are expert in this, or the South Americans players, they are good in this area. So what should we learn from this sort of life? You know, moving to Europe, seek greener pastures, and later about coming back to give back to your league. That person feel like he said. Some persons still look at it from the point of downward spiral, but it's a different trajectory. It all depends on what the player desire and wishes.
Yeah, well said. And one thing about our league, because I could remember when I'm trying to remember the name of the ex-Super Eagles player when he was squeezed on the question if he would come back and play for the league. In his words, if there is proper security, we need to put everything into proper context. We need to put everything in proper context. He made mention of the Brazilian league. You know, one of the biggest league. We might not be following it judiciously, but they have one of the well-organized league in the world.
That's true.
Everybody knows about Flamingos, the Sao Paulos of this world. They've churned out big players, you know, and we see all these guys. I think for them it is giving back to the society, more like a corporate social responsibility for them. You guys made me, and I think I owe you guys. I need to go back. And those guys went back because of how well structured the league is. We need to give it to the organizers of our league, Benga Elegbele and the other guys. They are trying their very best, although the league might not be growing at the pace we want it to grow. I think one of the hindrances we have in our league is security. And that we don't think the LMC or those in charge of our league can put that. That has to do with the federal government or the state government, as the case may be. If we have proper security in our league, in the country, that will propel these guys to want to come back. I could remember when Ahmed Musa came back the first time. The deal he had with them was just the home games. I'm not going to go outside the league. I'm not going outside to play for Kano Pillars. I'm going to play only home games. Because he was highly criticized for making the national team without being attached to any club. He did that just because of how insecure the country was at that point in time. But I think the security issue has been handled a little bit compared to how it was back then. And that's why we see also Brown there coming back. After he left Ocean Boys back in the days. I think Ocean Boys should be the now Rivers United, if I'm not mistaken.
Bayelsa United.
Yeah, okay, Bayelsa United. I came back to the league. He has seen a couple of improvements in the league. We'll begin to see improvement. When I mean improvement, it's not the business as usual. Back then, a couple of seasons back, almost win syndrome. But we see teams going away, pick points. We saw Kano Pillars go to the Cathedral against the Enugu Rangers, thrash them 4-3 in front of their home fans. We see Remo Stars go to the Gosula Pap International Stadium, pick a very good result. We begin to see the necessary change we need in our league, right? And I think this will propel these guys to come back. And I remember in his interview with Brown there, after their first game, they played the goalless draw against, was it Bayelsa United? Yes, at the Amesemaka Stadium right there in Port Harcourt. He said, a couple of his friends, colleagues in Europe, they've been asking about the league. They want to come back to the league. I think these guys are ready to come back to the league if our league is properly structured. I believe these guys are not coming for the money because they are made, right? I don't think an MPFL club can probably afford to pay a Victor Osimhen, right?
That's correct.
I think coming back to the league is, like I said, his own way of giving back to the league. We know what he brings to the league. If Osimhen comes back to the league, yes, he might not give us, that 100%, due to age factor and other stuff. But people want to see him. He's a big name. Ticket sales will go up. The stadium will be filled to capacity because there's nothing like enjoying football in an empty stadium. Imagine a Victor Osimhen coming to play for less capacity. And they've been making more money for Kano Pillars, right? And that's what it brings, more revenue for the club. And like I rightly said, first thing first, if the federal government can take care of the security aspect of the country, so that because most of these guys don't fly, they go by road, and the risk going by road due to insecurity in the country. Yeah. So if they can handle that security aspect of it, trust me, I can tell you for free, these guys, they want to come play for the league. They would love to come back and play for maybe the club they once played for before they left.
In fact, we can go on to look at the life of Jesus Navas and how far other players, especially bring it home to see what we can do to also balance our league, which is very impressive. Your last word for a man highly regarded, highly revered, and highly celebrated in Jesus Navas.
An icon, a dedicated player. A player worth emulating. I think, like I rightly said, let me further reiterate. For the young players who aspired to do what he did, considering his longevity, which we rarely see happening in recent times, go watch his clips, go study about his life. Like I said, he's worth emulating. He's a player that needs to be, if possible, they give him one start to there for Seville at Ramon Pizjuan Stadium, because I think he did a whole lot for them and he deserves to be celebrated.
Many thanks to you, Dere Francis, who, of course, for joining us on the first edition of the show today. And within the week, I was just thinking, I said, who better to celebrate? And that's why I consulted you, to get to this month. Because before you know it, a lot of people will not talk about him because of his lifestyle. And I'm happy that we had the time to also celebrate him here.
Record is made, the first for 2025. I think I need to frame this. I'll keep this for a very long time. It doesn't really happen every time.